All right, much better. 5, 4, 3.
Welcome to the Man Up God's Way podcast, a show that dives into the real, raw, and relevant issues for men and their faith, life, and community. Now, your host, Jody Burkeen.
All right, guys, here we are. We're going to try this. This is take 2 of August 22nd podcast. This is Jody Burkeen and the Man Up God's Way podcast. We're excited for you to be here tonight. We had a little bit technical difficulty. We had to start all over, but I think we are up and running now. So, again, my name is Jody Burkeen. I am your host. I'm also the founder of Man Up God's Way, a men's ministry designed to encourage and challenge men to be all that God has called them to be in their personal relationship with Christ, in their marriage, and in their parenting. And we try to do it to the best of our ability through the Bible, and we want you to read it as much as possible. Want to introduce my host tonight and my guys inside the studio. Ben, how you doing, brother?
Doing good.
We'll try this again.
Yeah, deja vu.
Deja vu. Yeah, I hate technology, man. It's crazy. So
Always at the wrong time.
it is, isn't it, man? I'm glad you're here. I know you had a busy weekend, and it's not always easy to get here to the podcast. So
How did you know I had a busy weekend?
I think you just told me that.
Just making sure.
Yeah, exactly. I did listen.
Yeah.
I did listen. So, yeah, we had all kinds of church stuff going on this weekend, and meetings and get-togethers and all kinds of fun
My
stuff.
weekend got away from me Saturday night when I went over to my friend Steve's and watched the UFC fights.
Oh, dude.
And they last till like 12:30.
Yeah.
And my normal bedtime's like 9:30.
I heard some dude got clocked.
Yeah.
Like,
Right in the last minute.
kicked his head off almost.
They were
didn't it?
nasty.
Were they? Holy cow.
It was good.
Well, good. I like a good MMA fight. So I'm 53, but sometimes I think I could fight like I did in high school and college. And I would get stomped. I like to feel like I could.
Yeah.
Fregosa, how you doing, brother?
Doing good, man.
Good. Glad you're here, man.
Heck yeah.
You staying out of trouble?
Best I can.
Awesome.
Yeah. We did a couple of my buddies took me out. We did a float trip. Floated the Huzzah. Is it the Huzzah?
The Huzzah, yeah.
Huzzah?
Mm-hmm.
It's wild out there,
Was
bro.
it?
You can't
Yeah.
keep it between the lines.
I was going to say, yeah. If you didn't have blue jean cut-off shorts and a tank top, you didn't fit in out there.
Yeah, I should have brought mine. I didn't even know.
Yeah, that natty light.
Yeah. Dude, they got elaborate out there. There were some people who got some coolers and some equipment down that river that they were parked up on the beach. I don't even know how they got it down there.
That's
It's
crazy.
pretty crazy, yeah.
Yeah, professionals, exactly.
Yeah.
So, well, tell us a little bit about what's going on at Man Up, Fregosa.
So we were talking a little bit earlier about the app. So obviously we've been pushing the app pretty hard. We're trying to create an environment for men to come in and have a spot that they can share openly, but not on Facebook. You know, we do have our Man Up group on Facebook, and we have quite a few members there. However, you know, we don't have things like the prayer wall. You know,
Right.
the app has a prayer wall where you can, you know, really be open and honest with what you're going through. It is membership based, meaning in order to be on the app, you do have to give monthly to do that. But it goes directly to this ministry. It goes directly to putting on this show. It goes directly to running and functioning that platform, that social media platform, because that's really what it is.
Right.
But it's a great way for men to have a spot. It's really just a big small group that, you know, you can direct message people, you can write on their walls. It's much like Facebook. They've done a really good job organizing it, and there's more to come on there. I know we're doing Bible studies that are going to be posted on there, and I think those are going to be exclusive to that platform.
Right.
And then obviously this show will always be up there, but this is going to be live on Facebook. We just want to create an environment where men can go talk openly about the things that they're struggling with without everybody being able to see, what that is and what it looks like. So
you and I were talking right before we started. One of the things with social media is like I literally got on my phone before the show started and I clicked on a text that I got. And then I have this routine in my life where for some reason I go from my text to my email to Facebook to, some other social media. And the next thing I know, I'm spending way too much time on it. And our goal with the app is to get guys in an inclusive place that doesn't have all the crap that everything else does, but it's a place for iron sharpening iron and helping each one grow. So that's really the goal of that. And we really want you to enjoy it. It is on Google and on iTunes, and get that as much as possible. Also, we have Man Up merch. Tell us a little bit about that, Fregosa.
So I'm not as knowledgeable in the merch. I know we got the coffee. I know we got the coolers, hats and shirts and all the above. And really, the merch is the same thing it's not the same thing as the app, but anytime any ministry is selling merch, it's to keep the wheels on the road. It's to keep us, afloat. It's to keep it going. We're not breaking the bank over here,
Right.
We're not making cash off this. We're just trying to get this ministry up and running. I think the podcast is about 8 months old at this point. We're coming up. I don't know how many episodes we're in.
We're in 33.
33.
Yeah. So it's going really well.
But that's what merch is for.
Yep.
It's to rep, it's to start conversations. It's for people to say, hey, what's that? Oh, it's the show. One of my buddies jokingly said, it's like the Christian version of Joe Rogan. Yeah. It was like, oh, they have guests on. It's like, I guess you can kind of say that. With just a little bit more technical difficulties, and the quality is not nearly as high.
Yeah, and Spotify is not paying us $100 million a year.
Yeah,
either,
this is again, which is why we have the merch. So that's what
yeah,
that's
it's manupmerch.com. Be sure to check it out too. So really excited tonight. We got a guest with us tonight that is we've actually been on his podcast and on his shows, and we're excited to have him here. Let me get him on here. Gosh, I hate doing this. Let's see here. Rob, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. I'm here.
Good. I'm glad you're here, brother. Let me turn your camera. There you are. Sweet.
I'm here.
This is Rob Lohman, everybody. Rob, say hi to everyone.
Hello, all. Hello, all. It's going to be a good night.
Well, good. So where are you from, Rob? You're out of Colorado? Is that right?
Yeah, I'm just outside of Denver in southwest Littleton, Colorado. About 45 minutes from where I took this picture behind me. So
I was going to say, it looks like you're out there right now.
Yeah, I know. I feel that way. It's not dark here yet, so it's all good. So this is my back deck and my multi-million-dollar mansion, just to let you know. So
yeah, nice. Exactly. There you go. Well, good, man. We're excited to have you on here tonight to hear your story and all the things that you're doing in your ministry as well. Colorado is one of those places that, desperately needs Jesus for sure. It's a very liberal state, especially Denver is a very liberal town, and you're climbing, no pun intended, but an uphill battle there in the mountains of Denver for sure. So
yes, highly aware of that wonderful predicament, a plethora of opportunity out here for sure.
Yeah, you definitely you don't have to look far to find somebody to talk to Jesus about. That's for sure.
Yep.
Well, good. Well, so tonight, Rob, what we'll do is you met Ben, you met Fregosa, and we just want to first of all hear your story, how you got to where you are today. We'll jump in as we feel like we need to ask a question and kind of get some clarification on something maybe. So we're going to spitball this, and you'll maybe hear Ben or Fregosa or I just jump in and start talking. So why don't you start at the beginning? How you ended up doing all the things that you're doing now. I know you're doing coaching and interventions and counseling and all kinds of stuff for addictions and for recovery as well. So tell us all about it.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a lot of awareness that needs to happen, and I'm a totally open book too. So it's all fair game to the journey I was on. I was hanging out with a new friend of mine, Monte Ball. He's a former Bronco player today. We were having lunch and just talking about life and different upbringings, different focuses, and relationships with dads, and just kind of all the stuff, right, that plays a role in our journey of addiction and recovery. And I mean, I was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana, so I'm a Midwest boy. Love the Midwest. You know, we have a good story about Vandalia, Illinois, to come up later in the show, but which is about an hour and a half away from you guys. But grew up in Fort Wayne, Christian home, aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody was in Fort Wayne. My grandpa, who was my idol, he delivered half of Fort Wayne, Indiana. So I always wanted to be a doctor. It was like, that was the guy I wanted to be, just like Papa. And just an amazing man. And so just family was really important to us. And we went to church. We were kind of like your, you know, what do they call it? Christmas, Easter. How do they combine those two words? I always forget. Creasters. Yep. We were creasters, but, you know, involved in just, you know, a lot of church activities. But we moved to Texas when I was in 4th grade. And that was a big culture shock, going from Fort Wayne, Indiana to Fort Worth, Texas. And my whole family was in Indiana. So I moved to Texas, and I just felt like this, like fish out of water kind of guy down there. And I still, when I go back to Texas today, guys, I feel like I don't fit in. It's just the weirdest thing. And I don't know why. Maybe because I caused a lot of chaos in Fort Worth, but just growing up in Texas was just a different deal. And I started drinking at 14 years old was when alcohol hit my lips for the real first time. Right. And for a lot of people, there wasn't something traumatic that happened. It was literally just social events, the allure of alcohol. It just looked fun.
Right.
I had no clue that addiction ran through my entire family. You know, and now that I have a 14-year-old now, like, they're very aware of our family history and aunts, uncles, cousins, all these, how alcohol is in there on both sides of their family. So it's good they just kind of know that, but I didn't really truly know the depths of it was in my own family. And so, but man, when alcohol hit my lips, it was at a church event, actually. It was Young Life. Yeah, it was a Young Life event in Fort Worth, Texas. And some kid came up and he goes, "Hey, Loman, you want to have a beer?" And I was like, okay, 6-pack of beer, 2 guys, 2 girls. We went through the bushes, and I literally just cracked all 3 cans. I was like, ka-ch, 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 and just chugged them. And I was like, hello, I'm home.
Hard.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I have a little extreme personality sometimes. But it just had me at ka-ch. And really, I mean, that was the next 14 years, 15 years of my life. I mean, that was
right.
The chaos I went through. And then, you know, God just kind of got a hold of me, but through that, it was just dark. It was tough. I lived the life of a chameleon. You know, when you grow up as a Christian, you're like, I know that I'm going to heaven part, but I sure as heck don't understand the lordship part. And that's what I struggled with throughout my whole entire addiction.
Right.
Yeah. And it was just, yeah.
How long were you addicted? And was it alcohol only, or was it other stuff?
Well, it started alcohol, and I always said I never do drugs, right? And then I went to college, and the freedom of being away from mom and dad. And my parents weren't like hovering over you and saying, don't, I mean, they weren't helicopter parents by any means, but I had a lot of freedom. And my mom grew up with an alcoholic father, and just, you know, there was that turning your head the other way because you don't really want to kind of know what's going on, I think.
Right.
And, you know, and my dad didn't really step in a lot to just kind of bring awareness to my plights, but I was also very manipulative and creative. And when I went to college, though, it was just kind of one of those things of, "Hey, Loman, you want to smoke some pot?" And I wanted to fit in, right? So I was like, "Sure, I'll try it." And then it was like, "Oh, I love that. Hey, Loman, you want to try some mushrooms?" "Yeah, it sounds great. I love that." So anything I tried, I loved. So it was between a cornucopia of substances, gambling, sex. It was just kind of all over the board through college. And just, I somehow skated by through this, you know, just barely through college, and graduated in 4 years somehow. But I got arrested a couple of times. I mean, I did a few overnights in jail, and I was your wild child for sure.
Wow. Okay. So what years were these?
So college ended in 1994. So
okay.
I was 23 at that time, and graduated college. I wanted to become a doctor. Like I said, you probably guys all three had mentors in your life, maybe, that you wanted to be like. Can you guys relate to that?
Yeah, I wanted to be a hitman vampire. That's what I wanted to be.
That didn't make my list.
The bad thing, he was like 25 when he wanted to do that. That wasn't even like
That was
younger
until
years.
that was until I got saved. That
Jody,
was like
Jody was extremely influenced by Blade.
Yeah.
With Wesley
He said,
Snipes.
Wesley Snipes, I'm in.
Let me see your
Rob,
team.
Rob, this is my pastor. I mean, this is literally the guy that is the shepherd of my life, other than Jesus. It's ridiculous.
Hey, to be fair, shepherds were gnarly, all right?
Tough guys,
Yeah, they're
weren't they?
tough dudes. So that it fits. It makes sense.
I'm not kidding. Asked my wife of all the things in where I wanted to be a hitman vampire. Like I don't know what it was. Like,
Nice.
yeah,
It doesn't look like you sharpened your teeth to get the vampire.
Yeah,
part.
no. I just wanted to kill people and be a vampire and live forever. Who knows?
Oh, I did not expect that one. That was
Yeah,
good.
that was way before Jesus and a whole lot of drinking. So,
Oh, man. I love
that
it.
was not good. So,
Oh my gosh.
but
I'm
yes,
smiling.
we had mentors.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like growing up, that was really kind of how Man Up became what it was or what it is, and is because I had an amazing dad, but he was very worldly, and as a Christian, I know that he tried to take care of me and, he provided for me and all those kind of things. And, I knew that he loved me. It wasn't like he was abusive or anything like that, but we didn't have that kind of relationship. What I think I have with my children now is that, I'm guiding them and leading them. This week school started here in our area in St. Louis, and I'm just watching all of these parents like literally going to the school and checking their lockers out and taking pictures with the teacher and meeting the teachers and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, holy, the only time my parents showed up at school was when I was in trouble or for a football game. That was about it. Like the parenting that's going on now. So that's really how Man Up, because when I gave my life to the Lord in 2003, I didn't have not one person from the church stepped up and said, hey, I will help you. And, my first mentor was my pastor. About 2 years after giving my life to the Lord, he realized that I was starting to kind of fall off, and he was just like, man, I will take you under my wing. And, he's the busiest guy in the church. And he did that. So for me, I didn't have a mentor growing up. I knew that the only thing I ever wanted to do was be rich and shove it in people's face.
Well, we talk about all the time about how, kids, they give their lives to the Lord as a child. And, there's Christian children that grow up and live a Christian life from the day they give their life to the Lord. But in a lot of cases, they got to discover who their own Jesus was. And I think that's probably what Rob's either going to talk about, or that's part of your story is you grew up in a Christian home, but you didn't know your Jesus yet.
Right. Exactly. That's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
that sums it up really well right there. Let's end the show right there. That was good. That was
Yeah, thanks for coming out, guys.
yeah, you're right on. Thanks for stealing my thunder. That was good. But it's funny though, because my grandpa, he was the guy I wanted to be like, but I also had these other mentors in my life, and I call them Johnny, Jack, Jim, and Glenn. And we got Johnny Walker, Jack Beam. Those were my other mentors in my life, and they just really took over.
We had a joke in college.
Yeah.
We had a joke in college. His friends call him John.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. So I just got way off track, but the whole time I just knew. I mean, I was in and out of arrests and here and there. But when I graduated college, in the day of graduation, this was the craziest thing. My parents didn't know this for years afterwards because they spent, $125,000 on college, and their son did not perform well. And at the end of it, but it was graduation day, and this is the brain of an addict, man. You're sitting there on graduation day. Nobody else knows you may not graduate. I mean, aunts, uncles, grandparents, they were all down in Greencastle, Indiana. I went to DePaul University, and they were all just there. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, I don't know if I'm going to walk the stage. And my professor calls me up and he goes, Lohman, get to my office now. This is literally 45 minutes before graduation is going to happen. And he said, all right, sit down. And I'm thinking, this is not good, you guys, at all. He pulls out the final, which is a 5-page final, 5 different tests. And he goes, first page, 99, second page, 100. Next page, he goes, this is the highest grade I've ever seen on any final in the years I've been teaching, professing here at DePaul University, he goes, what the heck have you been doing all year? And I said, did I graduate? He goes, yep. And I was like, zing out there. I didn't even say thank you. I was just hit the stage. And I mean, my parents didn't know that for years afterwards. And I just hid things really, 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 really well. But I was desperate and lonely. And I'll tell you we're just going to sum up the next X number of years from graduated college, moved out to Vail, Colorado, became, just a bouncer, which was a great thing to do after, a nice college degree.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a nice area to be bouncing in.
Yeah.
It's a good little spot.
I was bouncing, but
got a degree, probably the highest paid bouncer out there.
yeah. The hardest thing was the altitude gave me these blackouts. It was really weird all the time. And between the smoking pot and drinking, it was just kind of like,
I don't know if that was the altitude. I was going to say, been to Vail a time or two. It might have been the environment.
Okay, maybe it was the substances. And but I was just lost. And so for years and years, that was just my life, right? Career changes, city changes, all those things. But alcohol always followed me. And alcohol always beat potential every time they were in the same room together. And so eventually speeding up, it was just hard. I was like, I wanted so badly to be successful, but I had this gift of self-sabotaging my life.
Right.
And I hated who I become. I hated who I was. I hated the guy in the mirror, just sleeping around as much as you could and drinking and gambling and anything to keep me out of it. And then I'm going to go all the way to 2001 now. Okay. So we're going to zip to 2001 because I want to talk about the awesome stuff God's done since then. But, I got married in 1998 to a good alcoholic. Didn't last very long. We ended up getting divorced. And then in 2001, I was doing a lot with suicide ideation. And I don't know about you guys, but there's that voice in your head that just says you suck, you failed, you're a loser, you'll never make it, you'll never amount to anything. Any of you guys ever heard those voices in your head?
Yeah.
Even you guys in the chat right now, just put it in there that it's like, yep, I dealt with that battle. And this particular year, I would be driving down the highway in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and all of a sudden I would see my car veer off the highway and I would see it hit the median and explode. I would see myself dead on the side of the road. And I'm like, that was weird. And then it happened again and again. And I was afraid to tell anybody because if you tell someone that, one of you three guys, if you were my friends, you'd probably try to have me committed for, psychological imbalance.
Right.
And I was scared. I was really scared for the first time in my life. And one night, and I was praying to God. I'm like, God, I just please, I never did foxhole prayers like, God, get me out of this and I'll never drink again because I knew I would. But I was just like, God, I'm scared. And I know you hear my prayers and I just need help. And I was literally crying out for help. And then a short time after that, I was hanging out in a bar in Fort Wayne, Indiana, because I drank and drove 8 nights a week, like all the time. I was the designated drunk driver. Because I never had any quote unquote issues, but I was hanging out at the bar that night and all of a sudden the music got dead silent. Like I couldn't hear anything. It was tons of girls and music and band. And all of a sudden it was like you could hear a pin drop. And I audibly heard the words, "You're done." And then the bar got really loud again. And I looked around that bar and I was just thinking, I think I'm the only guy that happened to. And I looked at my friend Sean. I was like, dude, I got to go home. I think I'm finally done drinking. And I really believed I was done drinking that night.
Right.
Like it just something shifted. And what happened next was I drove home, kind of like two guys in the car, myself and myself. One felt he was sober and one was highly drunk. And I get home, walk up 12 stairs to my 1-bedroom apartment. Next thing I knew, I had 350 pounds on my barbell, picked up the barbell and just dropped it across my chest. And that was my out. And in the midst of that, because God is so good and so awesome, God like stopped time in my life. And he looked at my dog and said, "Go save your dad." And my dog Jake comes over and starts nudging my knee with his head. Now, granted, I feel like time stopped because I cannot hold that weight at all.
Right.
God carries the weight of the world. And he was that night. And once my dog broke my heart, God revealed himself to me through my dog. I thought about my parents and my brother, and I'm thinking, what am I doing? This is crazy. Who's going to feed you tomorrow, Jake? And I put that barbell back on the rack. Every time I tell that, I can literally hear the barbell metal hit metal. And God saved my life that night and comforted me that night. And he knew. And he took. So for guys that struggle with addictions and substance abuse, unfortunately, I'm one of the very few people, like the small percentage that this happened to, but God took a guy that drank up to 2 bottles of scotch in a day the day before, in the years before. And that morning he snapped his finger and just took it away. And in 21 years, I haven't had one desire, one obsession or anything to even think about drinking. And that's all God. And it was just, it was a beautiful morning for me.
Amen. Amen. I like what you said earlier, because it reminds me of when I was trying to, I just given my life to the Lord, and, you know, a lot of things in my life just quit almost automatic. I quit cussing, you know, I quit, you know, smoking, you know, all these outward things that I was doing. And I was really, you know, struggling with lust and pornography. And, but I had, convince myself that it was still okay to drink, you know, because the Bible doesn't say that you can't have a drink. And, you know, there's a lot of examples of having a glass of wine for, you know, and I had pretty much used every gray area when it came to alcohol until I finally lost my job because of drinking. And that was the last time that I had a drink. That was in 2005. When I had my last drink, and it was one of those moments where I miss cigarettes more than I do alcohol. You know, it's like, but when I look,
your mind,
but when I look back on all of that, it's like I don't miss any of it. And usually, what happens with most people is that sin always takes them further than they wanted to go. Like you're thinking. So I've always told my kids, you know, if there's 100% chance you'll never become an alcoholic if you don't take a drink, if you just don't try it, if you don't, you know, and trying to tell teenagers and 20 somethings, I've got two of them that are 20 somethings and 12-year-olds, twin 12-year-olds, and trying to tell them that, you know, they grew up in the church, they grew up with their dad as a pastor. And there's always this want to go out and just try. Okay, well, my dad tells these stories. It's kind of like what, you know, you're telling a testimony of what God did, and you were blessed that you didn't choke yourself to death with a 350-pound, you know, barbell or crash one night when we're drinking. Our kids don't have that promise. You know, it's not like they've got, you know, oh yeah, go out and have fun and do all that you want, and, you know, then you'll end up being able to tell us testimony like mine. That's not the point. The point is what God has done in your life. And I love what Ben said a while ago. You know, there are a lot of kids, the people that gave their lives to the Lord at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, those are more impressive to me than the dime a dozen stories of being an alcoholic and an addict and, you know, getting to know God, because they've walked the walk. They've battled the battles and they've won the battles. Not saying that they're sinless, but they definitely have you know, gotten a lot further than most of us did in our lifetime. And not saying that God still is in the miracle business, because when he takes a sinner like us and from the addictions and from, you know, the world and uses them for himself, man, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And so, you know, it's impressive that you were listening to God and that he was speaking to you in a bar, you know, and that's what most people don't understand. He'll speak to you anywhere you let him. So, that's impressive. I love hearing testimonies like that. So good job, man.
Yeah. Well, that was just the beginning though. Cause you take substances out and then you're left with you.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's the problem is, you know, you clean the mirror off with all the fog and you got to look at yourself kind of deal. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. So when you did that, what did you find? Like what was the issue? I mean, there had to be some underlying issues that you probably dug out from depths of your soul to figure out what caused you to do that.
You know, and that's the journey of recovery, man. Because in the beginning, so if I look back on it, right, and I look back and I encourage anybody stepping into a new world of no substances is seek counseling. Like seek a good godly counselor that can help you dig those things out. Because for me, it was just recovery programs, and I didn't do a whole lot of digging. I was just enjoying being sober for years and years and years. And then down the road, I'll tell you what happened is I ended up so I was single the whole time, you know, for the first 4 or 5 years of recovery, ended up getting married to my wife. So now I'm a husband. Oh, that brings up some insecurities, right?
Yes.
And And then that we just had a real rough start to our marriage. And then you become a father. Oh, there's some more things there. And then you become a business owner, and then all the things started building, right? And so over time, what happened was I stopped doing the things that helped me get better. I stopped going to meetings. I stopped going to men's weekends and recovery. I stopped plugging into church, and I got back to the same challenging mental space I was in before that night I got sober, but I was not using substances. I was still gambling a ton. And so I didn't get really healthy for a while, in the responsibilities of life, because I was still gambling. I was full of fear. The guy I thought had deep roots had just shallow roots in the rocks. And the guy that was this abundance mentality was really scarcity mentality. So I was really immature in my relationships with my wife and just as a parent. And that all came out in 2011 when I lost my insurance agency and the walls crashed down again. Suicidation came back. I was beating myself up again. Right. And then I ended up doing a major mental breakdown in 2012 in my recovery, which sent me to prison for a while. And it wasn't until I went to prison that I really figured out who I was. I really figured out, is this Christianity stuff real? I had time. So I was kind of going to seminary while my wife was back being a single mom, dealing with all the stuff of that. And she's like, okay, stop writing letters to me. Like, I get it. Like, I can't read them. And so she had to go through her own journey of who's this guy I married. And I was going through my journey of who am I? And I finally figured out, like, man, the Bible's real. Like, I read it from front to back, and amazing idea, and read 42 books when I was in prison, and just got to figure out who the heck was I. And I miss those times sometimes today, Jody. I just miss them because it was such a sweet, pure time of reflection, because I just had time. Right. And so that's when I really figured out who I was and what were the underlying things that were, kicking my rear end, and self-sabotage and self-doubt and all the negative messages that I've had to do some serious work to get those positive messages from, like, Victory of the Darkness and Neil Anderson and Bondage Breaker and Mark Batterson's books, like all the stuff. I mean, tapping into your Facebook stuff, and just like, it's like, those are the things that bring me alive now. So I'm grateful for Strong Christian Men programs, things that I got to do the work. But really I figured out who I was and what was wrong with what was wrong with me. I don't know what was off in me when I was in prison, when I was behind the walls. And I was supposed to be gone for 13 years, and I got out in 10 and a half months, and God's just awesome. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Holy cow. Yeah. That understanding of that, you've got to, I love what you said a while ago, while you had that time to do nothing but read the Bible. It's amazing how clear God speaks to you, and how clear Scripture comes to you, and how it all makes sense, and the Holy Spirit is speaking to you. We were just talking about this a couple weeks ago on the podcast. Is, one thing that most Christians don't do is read their Bible. Number two, when they are reading it, they're reading it in the wrong context. And I lied, not the wrong context, but in the wrong mindset. They're trying to study the Bible instead of devote to the Bible, where they're listening for God. They want to hear from God. And if Christians did that more often, we would be in a place that would be a lot better, not only as our families and our marriages, but also as the church and the community, because we would actually learn to live out what God is telling us to do. I think a lot of people are sitting in the proverbial bar right now, and all the noise in the world, they can't hear what God is saying by any means. Like, most of the time you can't hear yourself think when you're in a restaurant, with the bar, or even if you're just in a bar in a nightclub, like you did. I mean, very seldom does everything just go dark and quiet, and all of a sudden you hear that. But I think that's where most people are living their lives, of just this noise in their world. And I had to go back to that about 3 weeks ago. I'd spent the last almost year just kind of studying and not devoting, and it's been amazing, the clarity that God has given us when you have those quiet moments.
Have you, I was reading something or listening to something, I can't tell you where it was, but they were talking about a study that they did with reading the Bible and the effects of reading the Bible on the outlook on life. And so they did this large study, and they said, okay, they had a group read the Bible for 1 day a week, and after a period of time saw no effective change in their lives, no outlook change, no anything. 2 days a week, again, nothing. 3 days a week, they finally got a little blip on the radar is the way that they put it. It's like, it kind of, I think it might be making a difference. 4 days a week of reading the Bible was an astronomical change. 50% more happy with their life. Marriages, they were feeling like 40% more happy. Suicide, thoughts of suicide went down by like 60% in the group. And it was a total just mind shift, because when you're reading it every single day for devotional, or just going through and speaking it aloud. You've talked about this before, like, hey, I'm going to speak out these words and read it aloud so I can hear them. Charles Duhigg talks about the 4 modes of learning, speaking, reading, writing, and listening.
Right.
Well, if I'm reading them, I'm speaking them aloud, and I'm hearing them, that's 3 of the 4. And his studies would say that if you do 3 of the 4, you retain any information that is, you're speaking aloud. So I just found that really interesting. It's one of those things that we've been talking about recently is, hey, like, this has to be a part of your everyday.
That's good. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, one of the biggest issues is people read the Bible and they don't know who God is.
Right.
Even if they're Christians. Like, they don't know. It's like the class we're starting on Wednesday nights. Who is God? What are his attributes? What do all his names mean? That's where you start. And then I think we've talked about this before, but a lot of Christians, one of the biggest issues they make is, and you alluded to it a bit earlier, is we read the Bible and we're not looking to ourselves. Mm-hmm. We're looking for God. We look for God. We look to ourselves. Instead, we're reading it so we can quote the Bible verse, so we can teach others, so we can evaluate others. And especially when you get into like pastoral roles or ministry leader roles, or Rob, some of the stuff that you're doing, sometimes you have to make sure that you're still doing it for you first.
Right.
You're still looking at yourself. You still have somebody in your life that's pouring into you, because when you're in ministry, I mean, Jody, you just talked about this a couple of weeks ago where God told you at camp, listen, you're not doing enough for you.
Right.
As far as with my word, looking at yourself, evaluating yourself, searching your heart, all that stuff. So it's like everybody that becomes a Christian, like, instantly wants to teach or be a pastor or, save the world, when in reality, there's this sanctification process that's so important to us. It's not funny.
Yeah. That's a good point. One of the things I'm preaching through Acts right now, and, I'm also going to seminary, and about 6 months ago in seminary, I had a class on Paul, and, you always hear Paul, but like, Paul's typically every man's favorite guy. He's the guy that you kind of want to be, and he's bold, and man, he's not scared of anything. And learning from the time at the Damascus Road to the time that he actually started really traveling and doing his ministry work and everything was 15 years, and people don't realize that. They think, oh, well, he got saved on Damascus Road and he went straight to preaching and teaching. Like, he actually, went off for quite some time to what most theologians believe is to get rid of his Judaism.
Well, that's
to figure out and flesh that whole thing out.
That's why we don't, I mean, in the I believe it's in Romans they're talking about, or maybe it's in Corinthians, they're talking about who can be deacons and pastors, who can be our elders. Well, it's no new converts.
Right, exactly.
So if you just gave your life to Christ, you're like, I feel like God's calling me to preach. It ain't tomorrow.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's for sure. There needs to be and even, I started following Christ 27, so 10 years, and now I'm still figuring stuff out. Like, I'll do a Bible study or hear, some of these pastors that I like to listen to, and they'll just blow my mind with something. I'm like, what? Right. There's not a meme. There's a few videos going around talking about Christ's final words on the cross. And one of the prolific things that I feel like I kind of found out maybe last year was the final words of, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?
Right.
Someone brought it to my attention that that's actually Psalm 22.
Yeah.
And so in the Psalm 22 is a prophecy of how the Messiah will pass.
Right.
And so it's like this moment of, I grew up in church thinking, God is saying, God felt so abandoned and all the above. And then I have this new perspective. Maybe, okay, he was fully man. Maybe he felt just abandoned in that moment with the weight of the world. However, I have this new perspective of there's Pharisees all around watching him, be crucified.
Right.
And now he just dropped Psalm 22 on them. And they would know that was for a man who quoted scripture pretty much everything that he did. So even, following Christ for 10 plus years, there's still so much depth of knowledge that I don't have. And I've always said, man, that's a role I never wanted. Like, I'm good with the music thing. Like, I like doing that, but I don't I don't want that responsibility.
Yeah, it's Eli lama sabachthani is what he says.
He's just making us look bad.
Yeah, right. I was like, man.
No, yeah, that's in the Hebrew, but maybe Aramaic. I'm not for sure, but I think that's where we all have to grow in the grace and knowledge of Jesus. That's the process of a Christian, and there's no expiration date on the Bible. We've got to get to a place to where we're loving it, we're feeling it. It literally is one of those things. The more you do it, the more you love it. And if you get in those dry moments, man, you just got to kick through it and continue to push forward and get into as much as you possibly can, because those dry days will take you. That's where I always call the stinking thinking. If that stinking thinking kicks in, man, you're in a bad place at that point in time. So
yeah, definitely. When you're saying what you just said, it was like when I always felt so inferior to share my faith and things, because like, oh, you're the Christian. Well, I was like, I don't know. So I used to carry all these like Bible verses I write in my back pocket, trying to memorize stuff. I'm like, God, fill my brain in where the holes are, because I can read this 25 times and I still can't recite it back. I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with that now.
But you're probably like me. You hear an 80s song, you know exactly who sang it, when it came out, what year it was, and all the words.
It's crazy, isn't it?
I mentioned it earlier, but this has really helped me. And it has everything to do with retaining information. So Charles Duhigg, this actually happened to me in a restaurant. I started a project where I was going to read a book a week for a year. And so I did that, and about 20, 30 weeks into it, I'm sitting in a restaurant, and there's a couple behind me, and they're talking about the 4 modes of learning. And the guy's like, man, I can't figure out where that is or who said that. And I whip around and I say, oh, that's Charles Duhigg. It's a book. It's called, and then I stopped myself. I was like, don't listen to me. I'm a dummy. I'm an athlete. I read a couple books now. I think I know stuff. It's probably not him. And he lit up and he's like, no, that's exactly it. But the thing about it was, I was reading the books. I'm sorry, I was listening to the books. I was writing the notes down. So I'm hearing it, I'm writing it. Then I was doing a podcast, so I was speaking it back to, and so I'm doing these, and the stuff just stuck. Those things will just stick, and doing the gospel is no different. I listen to the Bible, I read along with it, and I can't tell you Bible verses. I can't tell you chapter verse, but pretty spot on. I can still quote, but it's only because I've heard it. I wrote it down because I'm like, that's money. And then I go immediately and I go tell somebody. I'm like, let me tell you this crazy thing that I just figured out, or someone just told me this. Like with the Psalm 22, I can't tell you how many people I called and said, hey, have you ever heard this? What do you think? And so I talk about it, and I'll never forget it.
That's good.
That's really good.
We need probably more of that. I'm getting now to where, and I've talked to Ben about this. Like I have. When I tell my testimony, and Rob, same for you. I mean, a lot of times when we're telling our testimony, that's the best way to reach people a lot of times, because you're letting them know where you were and where you are now. And you're not doing it really in a preachy way. You're just telling a story is really what you're doing, and you're letting them know what God did this, and when I met Jesus here, and then you're telling them that they can't refute that. They're not going to sit there and say, oh, you're a liar, Rob. I can't believe you'd say that, or that was all written by man, or the Big Bang happened, and that instead of having a Bible debate, in my life, and this is what I was telling Ben, is that I've got these key areas that I always talk about. I try to bring, especially men, I try to bring them to these certain places where I know the scripture, I know the context, I know the gist of what I'm trying to say, because most men, we're all pretty simplistic. We have 5 major problems: sex, wives, money, kids, and work. And then this overarching problem called pride. And if you can deal with any of those in a guy's life, you typically can I have the scripture to help them, with that, or the counsel to come alongside of them. And that's what Christians need to do, is they just need to know the stuff. If you're going to sit and do apologetics, you need to know a little bit more. You need to understand how it all was put together and formed and all that kind of stuff. You're just sharing your testimony and, evangelizing. It's a little bit different. So it's not as hard as people put it out to be, but it can be. And I've always said, man, if you know 5% more than most Christians, you look like a genius, when it comes to theology. So,
well, what's crazy is you only have to read, like the average American's reading 1 book a year, 2 book a year. Like if they're really into it, they're reading 2. You shut off the TV, turn off Netflix and start knocking out some books. You will be astonished.
You're meddling.
I know.
You're meddling.
I'm always meddling, man.
Okay.
It changed my life. That's no joke.
Yeah, you're right. There was a year, not a year. It was probably about 6 or 7 years. I was really convicted. Got rid of cable. Got rid of all my TVs, all of that kind of stuff. And it was the best 6 or 7 years that I had in my life. And something happened one year. I don't remember what it was, but like it was something stupid. Like I read Farmer's Almanac. It's gonna be the worst winter ever. And I thought, I'm not sitting in my house all winter long because I hate the cold and I'm not going outside. So we better get a TV just in case.
Oh, that's funny.
And it went downhill from there.
Well, I get so hardcore about that. And I think, Pastor Jody, I told you about this. Like it changed my finances. Like I started reading so much that it flipped my entire life upside down, how I operate, the job I have, how I organize my finances, and just, my walk with Christ, all the above. It's just night and day.
It's been great listening to you two jabronis and your 2 cute stories, but we've got a guest here.
I'm getting to
That's
it.
only to 2011.
Yeah,
so
I'm getting to it. So
sorry, Rob.
Hey,
Rob,
no, this is good. I'm growing right now. Like it's
Rob
it's
has
good.
got us fired up, man.
yeah, exactly.
That's right. Woo! There you go.
He got us on a rabbit trail. So
That's fun.
so we met in during the pandemic. I believe it was 2020, and you had I think you just started following our page or something. You reached out. You're having a conference, and it's online symposium, conference, whatever it was. You were doing interviews, podcasts. So you've been doing podcasts for quite some time now. What's it like going from the podcast guy to the guy on the podcast? What does that feel like?
Oh, it's a lot easier. You don't have to do any editing or anything like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
You just have to just show up and take off. But I'll tell you, during the pandemic, it was one of those things of, as an interventionist and a lot of things, I had to pivot and try to figure out, like, what do I do now? Because I, with all the stuff, I was not afraid of the pandemic. It was just, I didn't want to get stuck in Florida or some other state where I'd fly and they shut the airport down. So I was like, well, how can I reach people? And so the first thing I did before I met you was I did a 21-day virtual summit with 44 speakers. It was all about addiction and recovery and tools to help people. Right. And I came out of that and it was the weirdest thing, because this is the profession I'm in, right? Helping people with addictions, but I just was not fulfilled. 44 speakers. And I came out and I was like, man, I was happy that we did it. And the number one interview that was watched during all those 44 people was Dr. Neil Anderson from Freedom in Christ Ministries. The number one, he was bold Christian guy talking about identity in Christ. That was the number one video people watched. And I was like, wow, that was pretty eye-opening to me. And so then I said, hey, let's get a bunch of awesome Christian leaders around the country and then pull them together. So that's why I did the Identity in Jesus Christ Summit. And, I was going to have 14 speakers. I had you on like the list of 17. You were 17th, but other people backed out, Jody. So I brought you up the list. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
No,
thank
you were like,
Yeah.
right there. I was like, man, this guy's got,
Hey, last will be first. That's all I'm saying.
you were like changing lives. I said, this is really cool. And Dr. Joe Martin. And it was just like, man, these are the guys I want to be around. You know, Jeff Spatafora. It was just amazing, solid Christian men and women. I was like, this is a guy I want to get to know. And so you coming on that was awesome, and got to know you through that. And then just staying in touch with what I see as strong Christian men around the country. And I'm like, man, I wish that my wife got a position with a group out of Springfield, Missouri. And I'm like, yeah, when I get out that way, I'm going to come see you. Yeah. But it was
2-3 hours.
Yeah. It was just powerful, you know, and you were talking about books earlier, and I recently just sent the Circle Maker book by Mark Batterson. My book when I was in prison, and all the notes and everything, and just a thank you. And I mailed that off to him. So here's my book.
Awesome.
And I was like, and by the way, here's the book I just published in July, to read that one too. But it was just a thank you, and said, man, here's the book. Here's a return envelope and a stamp, you know, just send it back to me when you get around to it. And just to say, hey, his book changed like my relationship with God. And so there's other men's books I've read, and I've got them lined up over here on my table to just start mailing them out to people and say, hey, here's the book that changed my life for these reasons. Just want to say thank you. Send it back when you get around to it. And just appreciating strong Christian men and women around the country. And that gives me the comfort to go forward and be more bold in my own faith.
Right.
And so I step into that.
That's good. Well, that's awesome. I've always said, I mean, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. You know, there are people that are doing ministry where you can come alongside of them, or they can come alongside of you and help build that ministry, or, you know, have a second part of that ministry that's going to grow a lot faster than, you know, you trying to do it all by yourself. And I like what you did during COVID, is that you did have, you know, so many people on it. Joe Martin's a really great guy. He's got a great podcast as well. And I've actually been on his podcast. He's a great guy. And reaching out to men like that, to, you know, surround yourself, especially early on in your ministry, you know, that was pretty smart. So with the pandemic, obviously your job probably has just gotten harder, especially coming, you know, we're 2 years getting ready to go into 3 years here pretty soon on the backside of the pandemic, or I should say the backside of the beginning of the pandemic. And things don't look like they're getting much better as far as the emotional status. You know, we're starting to see reports come out about depression, suicides are off the charts right now. Antidepressant medications are off the charts right now. Alcohol and drugs are off the charts right now. Crime is off the charts right now. So all of this is going to go right up your wheelhouse, so to speak, because of you know, number one, people weren't meant to be isolated like that. And, you know, the fear that came along with it, you know, all of the anxiety that was pushed on it, and all of that. I finally got COVID 3 weeks ago. That's why we couldn't have you on a few weeks ago. It was the first time I had COVID, and it was kind of like, okay, well, I don't feel great, but I still worked, and because I work by myself, so I do construction on the side. So I was working by myself, and I still went to work and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't feel great, but it wasn't that big of a deal. But where are you? And again, I know other people have had some worse cases, so I'm not saying that it's nothing. What I'm worried about now as a pastor and as a men's leader is what we're going to see in the future, in the very near future, with, you know, just having to reboot everybody's brains. What are you seeing on your end?
Yeah, well, a lot of couples, a lot of people got to know each other a lot better during the pandemic because they're home now, right? So, you know, I mean, you know, it's fascinating when you hear the stories of, you know, wives catching husbands, husband catching wives, and, you know, well, you know, why are there 40 bottles of Listerine in the trash can? Well, because I'm not trying to drink and there's alcohol in it. It's just like people are realizing some crazy stuff, but I feel like people now are the mental health side of things is going to be one of our biggest struggles, but families just need tools on how to navigate these waters, and what's specifically talking about addictions, right? And that's why, in July I published my book, the Addiction Intervention book, because it was like people need tools on how to help their loved ones, and if their loved ones don't want help, how do they continue to move forward in their life, even though their loved one is choosing to. And sometimes you lose the power to choose in addictions because it just takes over so much. But when you can present options, say here's some ways to really kind of get help, then they can grab onto it. And my whole philosophy is, let's bring the bottom up to your loved one instead of let your loved one hit bottom.
Right. Where can people find that book?
On Amazon, and you can just go to addictioninterventionbook.com, and it actually goes to my main website. People can have various ways they can purchase the book, but it's on Amazon, and it's been so cool.
We'll post that in all of our text threads. Just so
thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's coming up with unique ways to reach people, right? Because some people don't like to read,
right?
Or listen to Audible book or listen to a podcast. And so here's the coolest thing. So being in tune with God, right? And just like listening. And you're a creative guy like me, right? You got to have a council of people to check your ideas with. It's kind of, hey, here's an idea. It's like, man, Jody, just slow down. Let's just do one thing at a time. And it's like me. It's like, Rob, slow down. Just do one thing at a time, right? So I've learned to listen. But 2 weeks ago, I was swimming in the pool. I love to swim. That's my exercise. I don't know what you guys do for exercise or mental health, but that's my stability.
Eat bonbons on the couch and watch Big Bang Theory.
All right, so you might sink in the pool. Is that kind of what I'm saying? You're not a swimmer.
I do construction all day long. That's my exercise.
Jody won't get in the pool unless it's like bath water warm.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. It's like more of a hot tub pool.
Yeah, exactly. My kids are going to grow up. My daddy never swam with me. Nope.
Yeah.
He did.
Well, and here's one of my biggest things I grieved when I was in high school, senior high school. I quit swimming instead of quit drinking. And I was a good swimmer. I had potential, and that was just something that was just one of those things like, man, not to play God and say, well, what would life been like if, but I just had to let that go. Right. But swimming has always been part of my recovery.
Right.
Even in my addiction, I would go swim and I put the headphones underwater and I would just swim and just listen to sermons or Christian music or whatever. And 2 weeks ago, I'm literally swimming in the pool and I don't hear it this time like it did in the bar, but it was like this thought was swim for recovery. I'm thinking, huh? What is that? You see people ride bikes across the country for recovery. And so there's a whole idea of you swim for recovery and create awareness. Christ is the center of everything I do. Right. And it's just so important, but it's like, let's swim for recovery and create awareness to give people hope, identity, and purpose.
Right.
And so I'm thinking, what do you want me to do here? And it boiled down to, so September 1st, I'm starting this swim for recovery campaign where I'm going to swim a mile a day. And I'm going to post a recovery story a day and some tips for families to tap into to learn how to help their loved one. And it's really just to give and just say, hey, here you go. But the cool thing is we just do swim-a-thons as a kid. So it's swimforrecovery.com, but people can literally just go follow it for the whole month of September and get amazing tips and tools and hear cool killer stories. So if you know anybody, if anyone's listening, you have a great recovery story from addiction, I would love to hear from you or reach out to Jody and Jody can connect us. But man, stories are so powerful. That's why I love podcasting too. And you asked a whole different question like 3 minutes ago, but that's something cool.
That's all right.
Yeah. I mean, I know we trash on social media all the time, but you got to make that a TikTok, man. That would crush.
Yeah, and I don't do TikTok, but I've signed up for a TikTok class next week or later this week to learn how to do it. So
that
would have somebody else run it.
Yeah,
that would crush.
Don't listen to Fregosa.
Crush.
TikTok, baby.
I'll send you an email. We'll help.
Yeah. Send me an email. Give me some tips, man. But,
I haven't been on any type of social media except for the Man Up app since January. I don't watch the news. Every once in a while, maybe I catch the 5:30 news between Family Feud if I'm watching, and I'm at so much peace in my life as far as that aspect of it. It's just incredible. Just stay off all that crap.
Yeah.
Fregosa will goes, we'll have you drinking again. I'm telling you, Rob, he's just not right.
We're gonna go viral. It's gonna happen. I'll message you after the show. Don't worry about it. Don't listen to these yahoos.
You'll never have to swim again, Rob. Just do it.
Exactly.
Oh my
No,
gosh.
the question was, what do you? So it sounds like you got some helps getting ready to come out, but what are you doing to prepare for? And what are you seeing? From this massive influx of addictions and alcoholism and suicide tendencies and all of that. What I see on this side is marriage issues, because people were so locked up for so long, and they did get to know each other, and they realize, oh crap, I don't like you. It's kind of like they're trying to figure it all out again. So
yeah, and that's most of the last families of people I've been able to help, is that issue coming up, is that now that we're home, and it's hard because you kind of grieve a little bit of, I thought I knew you and I don't.
Right.
And what I'm seeing, I don't like. And the other side too. I mean, even, people that are in recovery, just realize they were stuck and they're struggling. And it was just like, hey, remember what you did back then that got you healthy? Maybe stepping back into that would be a good idea. So it's really just having raw, authentic conversations, because people will call and they want to do these big, huge interventions and all this stuff, right? Or get all the troops. And I say, hey, let me just ask you one question. I sometimes talk myself out of business. I'll say, well, would your loved one just want to go have coffee?
Right.
Let me just hang out with your husband or your son and just say, let's just talk real. And we get into it. It's like, man, aren't you just sick and tired of this rat race you're running right now? And what's missing? And those real, true, authentic conversations I love having, but I can say the exact same thing to someone a family member is, and they'll receive it, but they won't receive it from the family member. And so I'm seeing a lot of desperation, but I'm also seeing a lot of hope in people. It's like things are opening back up and they're like, hey, I can get to meetings. I'm okay to go to church now. I wouldn't go to church because my church, makes people wear masks, and I refuse to wear a mask, and now they won't. I was like, okay, well, now you go back. I mean, all these things are changing with people.
Right.
And it's been people got just ping pong back and forth so much. So there's a lot of confusion, but and chaos in people's brains. But I also feel like people are starting to feel a little bit of hope in like the recovery world. And I feel like there's so much more, because I love social media for positive reasons, and reaching people and connecting, and just to connect two dudes that have the similar story that's not like mine. Like I had a woman last week call me because her son he's in prison for a sex charge that was alleged, right? And I have a friend of mine that went to prison and got out of prison and survived what he went through. I said, look, that's just not something I had to endure. And it was alcohol, drug related, everything, right? But here's a guy that has a very similar story. And instead of me helping you, I'd rather those two guys connect, because they're really going to connect well. And so trying to connect people to those, as many connecting points as you can, I think really, really, really helps guys be heard, feel understood, not judged. And it's huge community piece. Huge.
That's great.
Yeah, I like what you said there about getting together one-on-one for coffee. Man has one issue, his heart. And that's the beautiful thing about what Jody talked about earlier about sharing your testimony, because you're sharing your heart and you touch men's hearts. And that's one of the things that I was in Fraser, Colorado last November at Eldridge's Wild at Heart boot camp. And that's where that kind of came to light for me, was just starting to look at the root cause of my problem, which by everything I read in the Bible, it's our heart. And just getting those things, anything I was struggling with, not that I don't struggle, I do, but getting all those things out of my heart, realizing that, although I never would have told you I was just like my dad, I was exactly like my dad. I never remember a time in my life I wanted to be like my dad. My dad wasn't a bad man, but I realized that week that I was just like my dad. And so if you don't think you're like your dad and you are like your dad, then you're not looking at those things because you think you're not like him, this, that, or the other. So I like the one-on-one, You know, sometimes, I mean, sometimes that big intervention thing, it's worked many times, but man, just sitting in front of somebody and talking about life and talking about our struggles, like Fregosa was talking about earlier, that's going to get to somebody's heart. And that, you know, it's like that night that you know, what happened? Your dog made you, you know, change your, you know, he cut you in the heart, right? And God changed your heart that night. It was your heart that he changed. That's what he's coming back to restore. That's what he's coming back to make new, is this heart that is so wicked that we have, you know. I'm not going to quote the verse because I quote it on every episode. I'll just say Proverbs 4:23. Read it every day, man. Read it every single day. Read that verse.
That's good. Amen.
Yeah, that's
Love
huge.
that.
And I'm just coming off 2 weekends ago, a whole men's retreat. And it was 3 days of just, I staffed it this time because I went through the group before as a participant last year. And it was so cool. Like I didn't really want to go that weekend. I was just kind of like, you know, I was like, I got other things to do, my kid like this. And I was like, you know, but okay, I'll go. It was just kind of one of those to do, I'll go, staff the thing type thing. And I went through the training and it's hard to say it out loud because like part of the guys in my men's group are just awesome, but I just didn't want to go.
Right.
You know? And why did I not want to go? Because God had something to show me.
Yeah, exactly.
and he did. But these six, like I think it was like 40 something men. It's just, you watch them come in that day just angry the first day, and they left happy and joyous and free. And because they got to the root of some crap. And it was so cool to watch them when they got there and they got it. And then they just let their defenses down and said, oh my gosh, that's why. That's a reason why. And they saw that. And it was all around addiction and, you know, stuff when we were kids and our dads and, you know, church leaders or whatever, or a football coach or a mom or people just treating you wrong. And it just stuck because you didn't know how to process that as a kid. And it just went through life. So there's so much freedom. And I hope that guys that are stuck would just step into more opportunities to grow and just see what God does with them. I did not expect what I got that weekend at all. And it was pretty cool what God revealed, which was pretty awesome.
That's good. So are you counseling? Are you, would you call it more discipleship?
Coaching and just more coaching.
Okay.
Yeah. Interventions and coaching and definitely not counseling. That's I leave that up to the pros, right? And
exactly. No, I have a 3 meeting rule. You know, if you can't figure out 3 meetings, then you need professional help. So I send them off somewhere else.
Send them to Rob.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I send them somewhere else. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, it's like, why? I mean, you hear people go to counselor I've been going to the same counselor for 12 years on the same issue. I'm like, man, that person must have a nice Mercedes. It's like, let's get in and clean this stuff out and just get real and just call it what it is. And if you don't know what it is, let's find it's that whole shadow, false self stuff, right? It's like,
right.
You know,
Jody, that is.
Joe, I can't say this for sure, but I know since I've been in the church 6.5 years, there's probably not more than a handful of people that have talked to Jody one-on-one more about life than me. I'm sure there are some, but it's not many.
You're probably right.
And so, I've had huge growth in my life that, you know, God gets all the credit, but he uses Jody to do it. And when there's real growth, when there are things that cut me to the heart that make me see, most of the time it's me talking to Jody about how he used to screw that up in his life too. Mm-hmm. And it's that honesty and that, you know, if he tells me, you know, all that about his life and I see the man that he is now and his family and you know, he's a pastor and he's doing all this stuff, you can't help but say, you know what, I need to try that because it's working for him. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times it's just getting together and just having a conversation. We always talk about it, man, about sharing the Saul and Paul side of your testimony. Mm-hmm. The power is in the Saul side. Because God gets the credit for the Paul side. Mm-hmm. So the more and more you share about the Saul side of your testimony, then it really, when you get to the point about the redemptive love of Jesus Christ and what he did on the cross, man, you've got him.
Amen.
I mean, you just air it up. I did my testimony last Saturday at a men's breakfast, Rob, and I'd never shared a lot of this stuff with anybody. Jody knew some of it. But dude, I was bawling. I mean, some of this stuff was just coming up, and I was feeling the shame and the guilt and all that in my life, dude. And then when I got to the part where the but God part, the place was quiet, but I aired out all this stuff that I didn't want to tell anybody,
right.
But there's power in it.
There is. The Bible's very clear about, iron sharpening iron, number one, confessing to a brother, number two, and keeping brothers accountable. You can cover a multitude of sins if you will get involved in their lives. Yeah. And that's why, to be honest, that's why Man Up God's Way was founded 10 years ago, was in order to push guys to a place to where they are, actually doing Christianity and doing life together. So
I'm probably butchering this, but it's bear your burdens amongst yourselves and so fulfill the law of Christ. It's not just, hey, you know what, guys, bear your burdens. No, it's fulfilling the law of love.
Right. Yes.
Yep.
That's good. So Rob, what exactly is an intervention? What are you doing? Like, all I can think of is that TV show
that that show, by the way.
Like where you corner them and the whole family's there and everybody reads a letter to them and you give them an option. But I don't think that's exactly what you're doing. What are you doing with your interventions?
Yeah, there are those moments for sure. That's definitely true. But families call and it's crisis moment, right? So we really got to settle it back down and figure out what is the real crisis going on here, what's really going on. And so for me, it ranges literally from having coffee with a guy and saying, asking the loved one, say, have you ever asked your husband or son or whatever if they want help? No, I just know they need help. I'm like, well, just ask them if they want help. And you met this guy that obviously I don't know what I'm doing, so meet with this guy and just hear a story and go from there, to all the way to the point of crisis intervention. Families rallying, we're waiting down the street in our cars to just show up at the house and just go through the front door all together, and I introduce myself and just take control of the situation. And and ultimately it is letter writing, but obviously there's no TV crews, right? But it's letter writing, but it's coaching and educating the family the whole way about boundaries, and here's what we need to do, here's why, are you willing to do this? And it's not get out of the house in your trash bag, you stupid. It's like, man, we love you so much. I hope you can feel the love in the room right now, because all these people love you, man. I love you. And I don't know much of your story. And the cool thing about testimonies is they go, well, how do you know me, bro? Like, well, I give my 1 minute spiel, like, okay, you've been through some stuff. All right, you got some street cred. That's good.
Right.
Earn their trust. And
yeah, exactly.
And the in between there is just saying, hey, Billy, we're concerned and we don't know what to do anymore, but we don't want to lose our family unit here. So we're inviting a guy named Rob to come over next Tuesday at 12 o'clock. We'd like for you to be at that meeting. Are you willing to come? Mm-hmm. Like, literally, there's nothing that's going to happen that day. We're just going to talk. So would you come? Sure.
It's good.
And then, and those are a lot of fun, because they have some sort of willingness. They know I'm going to be there. They don't know who I am.
Right.
So it's all in between there. But my whole role is to facilitate a loving conversation, to move their loved one to want help, and to hold the mirror in front of the family and say, okay, everyone has a part in this. So if you're going to move forward together as a family unit, I'm going to ask you all to do some work also, which is why I have a family coach on my team, another interventionist, like a couple other people on my team. And so we have the kind of full prong approach, and counselors and therapists all over the country, and just knowing a lot of killer programs out there that people normally wouldn't know about by looking it up on the internet.
Rob, my favorite part of that show, Intervention, is where the interventionist is with the family. The drug addict isn't there yet. And he would look at the family and he would say, let me ask you all a question. If you didn't give him any money, how would he get all this stuff? And they would just like sit there, because they were enabling them.
Yeah.
Not saying that they wouldn't get it some other way, but I mean, they were like, well, he needs help, or he always does this. And it's like, stop giving him money or her.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how, addicted the family is to the addiction. That's usually what happens, is they just kind of get to this place to where they haven't, when they can finally say we're done, then the help can begin. It's not until they say, well, we have, they keep thinking, well, he's going to quit, and he's lied for this many years, and they keep thinking one more time.
They get addicted. We get addicted to the fixing.
Yeah, it is.
To trying to fix, to trying to say that one thing or do that one thing that's going to open up their eyes, this, that, or the other. And it's all God, man.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah. And here's the hard thing with that is, imagine looking at like a ship in the raging sea, and it's being tossed around everywhere. It's like that's addiction, right? Chaos, boom, thrashing sails. I mean, you're tipping over and capsizing and swimming back to the boat. And then immediately imagine being put in a placid lake in the same sailboat and nothing's happening.
Right.
It takes a long time to get to be comfortable in that placid lake from that. So there's tons of education that has to happen. And if the family refuses to do work, like, I'm not doing anything, it's all their fault, I won't work with them. Like, if you're not willing to step into this and do some work, thanks for the check, appreciate it, that's great. It's like, but I can't take your money, because like all you're gonna do is call me in a couple of months and say it didn't work.
And
right, exactly, it didn't work because you didn't. So it is a family situation, and a lot of times it's like giving people the tools for kids. I mean, there's a program here in Colorado. It's a free program for women. It's a Christian program for a year. They go for a year. Knowing those resources. A place in Arkansas, the same thing for men, and just finding these programs that aren't going to cost you $85,000 to send them to get massages and foot rubs and play basketball and never open up about your life. So I definitely challenge families. And then a lot of the coaching I do too is just like, if you're not willing to do the work, why are we meeting?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have some great programs around here too that really do a good job. Teen Challenge is one of them that does a great job. We have the Troy Dream Center that we actually had on the podcast a couple hours north of us, and there's a lot of, that's one thing is if you're in ministry, you need to have those things, in your phone book. You need to make sure that you've got those people and avenues for, you never know what's going to happen. I'll give you a great example. We had just begun at our church to have AA, and it was a non-sanctioned church that or non-sanctioned ministry in the church, but we've got a church building that's 15,000 square foot that's only open 4 hours a week. And so my goal, my vision is that this thing is open 24/7. And we had a couple come in and they were like, we want to do AA here. There's not one in the area. They're too far out. And I was like, heck yes, let's do it. So we had we just started it. Like, I don't even think they'd had a meeting yet, but we had planned it. Everything was going to go. I had a church member come up, and he's got an amazing testimony. Beautiful, beautiful testimony now. He was addicted to opiates, and he was in an industry to where it was relatively easy to get. And I'm not going to divulge his story, but he got caught. They gave him a chance, put him in rehab, got caught again. It was just like this one thing after another. And he finally, the problem with addiction or addicts a lot of times, what you and I think is rock bottom is not even close to their rock bottom. Like, they have to hit hard a lot of times. We're looking, I'm going, holy cow, how much lower you can go? Well, just give them about 2 months and you'll see. And this is kind of where he was. He was at rock bottom. Came to me and confessed, like, just he hadn't told anybody. His wife was I think the only one that knew. And I was like, dude, I got your help. I've got a guy who just came to me, shared his story, his testimony, and they were meeting for months and months and months at a time. And it was all because of connections. It was all because, there wasn't anything that I could do other than, listen to him confess, pray for him, show him where he's wrong, now I knew that I needed to keep him accountable as long as he gave me that authority. If somebody doesn't give you authority in their life, then you really don't have any authority in their life to help them through that. But now, going on almost a year, he's clean. he has been forever. He got his job back. His wife they all come to church. Like everybody's given their life to the Lord. They've been baptized. Like, it's just a beautiful thing to see. And it's all because of connections. You know, if I hadn't have had that connection, because I don't know what it's like to be addicted to opiates. You know, I was back in the day when we just had alcohol and, you know, some good, I would say not great drugs, but just regular drugs, not like these opiates. I mean, these opiates are a different beast. And it's all about knowing people. And that's the great thing about Christianity, is the connections that we can have and we can build in order. And it's not to have just 5,000 friends. It's to have people that can help do life together.
Yeah, and the alternative to that is unacceptable. You know, I won't throw what church it was under the bus, but I was working for a church, and we had someone, who was running away from a bad housing situation and literally screaming through our parking lot, "He's trying to kill me, he's trying to kill me," and said, "All right, we'll get in the car," and she was high on something, and called the pastor, "Hey, so here's the deal, I'm the worship leader." I said, "What's our protocol? What do we got? Who are we calling?" He's like, "Well, we call the cops." I'm like, "Dude, that's not going to fly.
Right.
That's not going to work for tonight." I ended up grabbing a couple, I actually almost got let go for this, but I ended up grabbing a couple people from my small group at the church. And I was like, "Everybody's at my house. We're going to give this chick a room. We're all sleeping in the living room." And that's what it's going to be.
Right.
Everybody's going to take shifts. We're going to watch her and all the above, but like, that's not a good option either.
Right.
In hindsight, that's a horrible option as well. But you have to have connections in the community, because the call can't be, "Well, we're calling the cops," or, "Hey, sorry, you're going to go to jail."
When in majority of addictions are not necessarily the lady who's screaming down the street. The majority of addictions are the dad, the quiet one, the dad that comes home after work and takes 3 drinks, before he even goes to bed, and is drunk by 7:00, and he's a functional drunk. Or the mom that's got the kids off at school, drinking a bottle of wine by herself. Those are the addicts that typically justify everything that they're doing. Not the kind, like this guy. He was functional on opiates. Like, I don't know how anybody can function on opiates. Like, all I want to do is, like, if I've ever had a pain pill after some kind of surgery, I just want to sleep. Like, just put me out. So but anyway, my point, Rob, is that I think it's awesome that what you're doing and how you're putting people together, knowing your abilities, where your max line is, like, okay, I can go to here, then I need to get somebody else involved, and so forth and so on. That's really cool.
Well, that's the first sign of somebody that just wants to help people.
Right.
Whether he's gonna take them all the way through or not, he's just trying to get them help.
That's so true.
And that's authentic. Right?
That's good. That's really good. All right, Rob. So coaching. What do you do? I'm assuming this is after the fact. So you do some coaching with these folks, or is this coaching for somebody who's wanting to get in this kind of ministry, or what is this exactly?
Yeah, and real quick, Rob, before you start, also as you're answering those questions, tie that in with the 2 websites. So one's recoverwithrob.com, the other one's liftedfromtherut.com, and how do those tie into the coaching and the intervention and stuff like that?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, liftedfromtherut.com is it's everything I do. I mean, you can learn about interventions, books, events, it's just everything that is in my wheelhouse, the podcast, everything. And recoverwithrob.com is just a way for people that want help and want to change their life, whether it's a family trying to help a loved one, or someone in recovery that's stuck, or someone that's trying to find recovery. Is just a way to say, "Hey, let's schedule some time to chat. No obligation. We're just going to see where you are." And again, if I'm the right fit, cool. We'll talk about coaching. We'll talk about intervention. We'll talk about something moving you forward. If I'm not, say, "Hey, I know this other guy. I think you'd be awesome with this guy." I mean, you would totally connect, and you listen to their stories, right? Because I mean, if they have if they're in their 20s and they have a abusive father who's 50 and he's got white hair and a goatee, and I'm a reflection of his father and stuff, I'm like, man, you might need a younger guy. So It's really figure out where they are. And that's where the coaching really starts. It's I don't coach people that are in active addiction because it doesn't work well, because they're not being authentic. They're not coming with their whole self. I mean, it's just kind of, and I don't chase people down. I mean, you can pay for a month of coaching. Right. If you don't show up, then it's like you just wasted the money. I'll just use that to give someone a free coaching thing later, right, and pass it on. But so it's really finding people that are committed to some sort of change, and maybe they don't know what it is, right? And so we'll step into kind of a program I have put together of just walking people through it. And here's the great thing is, you mentioned this earlier, Jody, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
My buddy, one of my mentors, Don McCreevy, works for Exchange Life Ministries, and he has this great online conference that's free. And I'll ask guys like, hey, are you want to grow deeper in your faith, or what is it? And they say, yeah. And I've had a couple coaching clients, and they just go through that, and we talk every week, and we see what they're learning, and their whole perspective changes, right? Instead of, me trying to get to that real hardcore biblical development stuff, which isn't me. And, but finding things of people that I believe in and say, hey, there's this, Man Up God's Way, app that you need to go download and tap into this community. I mean, finding people that way. Right. And then just, not holding them accountable, but just saying, okay, here we are. So I don't have a straight up, here's my coaching program. What I do is I meet people where they are, even people that want to write their own book, that say, hey, Rob, I saw your success on Amazon with your book. Teach me how to do that. So I'll coach people on that. Or how do you start a podcast? Or, just different areas in their life. So it's not just addiction focused. It's really a lot of it is addiction based, but it's really, how do you set boundaries? How do you practice forgiveness? How do you forgive yourself? How do you figure out who you are in Christ? If they're, Christians, I'd probably say 65% of my clients are Christians. The other ones know I am, and they don't want any of that, but they're still getting it behind the scenes.
Right.
And, but it's group coaching, it's individual coaching. And I mean, I work with, high powered business guys and someone that's, 3 months out of treatment because they want it and they're just stuck somewhere and they don't know what to do. So it's, and that's the fun thing. It's, you just kind of meet people where they are instead of trying to fit them into a cookie cutter box of a program. And because I don't work that way. So how can I coach someone that way? Says, well, in week 1, you got to do this. In week 2, you got to do this. But I bring in stuff like watching the Chosen videos and talking about that, the week next, and say, how did you relate to Peter in that? And we talk about real life situations, or we'll go on a hike. We'll just go hang out by the river for a couple hours. Sometimes I'll just spend, 5 hours with a guy that he's like, I just need an afternoon just to process through some stuff. And we'll just sit by the river and process through it. And I have a lot of strategies I do with that, definitely, and not just freewheeling it, but meeting people where they are. And I use a lot of Neil Anderson's work through Steps to Freedom in Christ to walk guys through. And I just find things I really like and say, hey, the big question I ask people is, how do you learn? When you guys were talking about, like, I like to read, I like to watch videos. It's how do you learn? And then let's start there and then move you into maybe areas you're uncomfortable learning, and then try that so you can grow a little bit.
That's good.
Rob, normally we don't like guys on this show that swim a mile a day and hike. But I really like you.
Hey, I'm finally going to lose the 15, 20 pounds in front. I've been wanting to lose. So I'll take a before picture September 1st and an after picture. And,
what sucks is I've been out to Colorado, especially in the Denver area, the last 3 or 4 years. My son and I I can't do it anymore, but we do a hike up Mount Evans and stay up there for 4 days up at right around 11,000 feet. And I got altitude sickness every single time. The last time I was up there, man, I thought they were going to have to get a helicopter to bring me down.
My buddy Steve, that was an Army Ranger, he told me Saturday night, Tums.
We'll get rid of
Tums gets rid of and prevents altitude sickness.
Seriously,
he just told me that the other night because I was laughing.
I'm like afraid to even try anything just because it hurts. Tums. Like it's the worst feeling I've ever had in my life. Like I was up 4 days, not eating, not urinating. I was not doing anything. I was sick as a dog.
Jody's never done the hike.
Next time,
No, I know. I do the hike every time, but as soon as I never do the camping because I'm in my tent.
well, next time
do you ever do Boost oxygen cans?
Yeah, I had the Boost oxygen cans.
All right.
I had 4 or 5 of those with me, and like the hike I can do all day long. It doesn't bother me. We got 60, 70 pounds in our rucksack. Doesn't bother me at all. As soon, I'm not kidding. This happened 3 of the 4 years. Get up there, put my tent. Next thing I know, I am done. I'm in my sleeping bag, and I don't get out for 4 days.
you said,
Like, I'm that sick. And everybody has said you should have gone down, another 3,000 feet, and reacclimated and then come back up. But by the time I get up there, the headache hits, the sickness. Oh my gosh, dude, it was done. So my point when saying all that is, I wish I'd have known you a little bit earlier that I would have, come out there and see you. So I'd forget, you get out there and I'm with my son and, I'm with a couple other guys from, men's ministries, and we take these young guys up and try to minister to them. So
Yeah, we all have our seasons, right?
amen. Yeah, exactly. That season's over. So I think I'm going to start doing some kind of hike out on the beach, like
those are a
from the
little
car
safer.
to the beach. That's about it. Exactly.
Nice.
Well, Rob, brother, man, it has been a pleasure. Anything as we close up here? Anything else you want to say to our audience?
This phrase came out of my mouth last week, and it kind of stuck with me. Is that a lot of people don't reach out for help, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's this big shame boulder right in front of their mouth.
That's good.
And let's just roll that aside and just say, hey, bro, like, I'm coming to you because I've never told anybody this before, but I'm tired of suffering alone. I just want to tell you what's going on. And do you know any way that I can get some help? And just reach out to somebody that's a trusted person, and just say, I need to tell you something I haven't told anybody before, but I'm hoping you can help me after that, and just see what happens with it. I mean, it can only get worse, right? If you don't do anything. And so take a chance on yourself, invest in yourself, because you're worth it. And, God doesn't make junk. So whatever the devil's telling you is lie, and it's false, and it poo-poo that away. But God says you're awesome. He's got big plans for you, whoever's listening, and just believe that.
Amen. Well, brother, it has been a pleasure. We'll be praying for you and your ministry. I know that it's going to be needed, until Christ comes back. So stay grounded, stay on your knees, man, and keep seeking God in all that you do. We'll be praying for you.
Yeah, Rob, if you make it to Missouri, man, you'll have to come in studio.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'd love to do that. So from now on, I'll just be called Flipper for the next 6 weeks. And then
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. We'll be praying for that too. Yeah.
Thanks.
I'll, that'll be cool to watch you do that. 30. So it'll be 30 miles total. Is that what you're doing?
Yep. 1,980 laps.
Okay. Awesome,
Ooh.
brother.
all broadcasted on
That's great.
TikTok.
Yeah. You send me that email about TikTok.
I got
All
you.
right, there you go.
It's
All
like
right, brother.
60 laps a day,
Yeah,
bro.
I know.
You used a calculator, didn't you?
Yeah. No, he's pretty.
No, I'm pretty good at
He's a
math.
fart. He's a fart smeller, man.
Nice job, Ben. That was
Yeah,
good.
exactly. So, all right, brother, you take it easy, and guys, this will be up on any podcast platform starting tomorrow morning. We love you and have a great week. God bless.
You've been listening to the Man Up God's Way podcast. Visit us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, and our website at manupgodsway.org.